Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here with the Green Film Festival San Francisco. Thanks for joining us. As you know, we like to kind of program some of the most interesting, cool, and unusual films from around the world that relate to the environment and just our place on this planet. You recently just had a chance to watch the really terrific documentary Musher, and we are delighted to welcome the cinematographer and producer here, B. Rich. Welcome, B.
Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Um, Maybe a good place to kind of start is, can you kind of share a little bit about the genesis of the idea for the film and how you guys decided to kind of take the leap of faith of telling the story?
Sure. One of the co-directors, Lori Little, we're all friends and we've worked on films together in the past. And she and her husband are like hardcore downhill skiers. And there's one resort or one ski slope up in the Upper Peninsula that they go to every year called Mount Bohemia, where I think it's all black diamond, crazy downhill stuff. And one year when they were going up there, I think it was 2016, they stayed at a motel and they came out one day and there was like all these dogs and the just dogs and a sled and people moving around and they had no idea what was going on. And they got to talking to the people and they realized that there was this big dog race up in this area and sled dog race. And so she came back and she had taken some pictures with her phone and a little bit of video here and there. And she's like, did you know that this existed right here? You know, because we'd always heard about the Iditarod and some of the races out west, but none of us knew that they were happening right here in the Midwest. So we kind of at that right then decided, well, let's, look, is there any films about this already? And there weren't any. And so we kind of put our heads together and said, okay, well, let's go up next year to the race and see what's going on. And so then we went up the next year with I think there were four of us. And we just kind of went around and talked to people. We shot a little bit of footage. Mainly it was just to see what was going on and what this was all about. And so that is where it began. And from that initial sort of tour of the race that year, we met several racers that we decided would be wonderful participants in the film, and they were interested as well. So we followed them, proceeded to follow them through the year. Our idea was that we'd shoot this over the course of a year, show what a year in the life of the sled dog community looks like, and it would culminate at the race the next year, and that would be it. It would be sort of, here it is. Well, we did that, and then we got into editing, and we started moving, and then the pandemic came around, and so then everything got shut down, and we couldn't go back and get some of the things that we had missed because we had a big territory to cover. Like some of the mushers lived in, Alex lives in Duluth, Minnesota. We were following another musher who didn't unfortunately make it into the film, but they were north of them, almost to the Canadian border, and several of them scattered throughout Wisconsin. So we ended up having a much longer time making this film than we anticipated. But that's the general sort of genesis point, was just this accidental collision of people with dogs and curiosity.
Nice. And well, I can, of all the different kind of, films in the festival, imagine the kind of environmental circumstances of what you have to, capture the story must have been very difficult. As a cinematographer, how do you kind of prepare yourself for the endurance of this sort of thing? And also, what were some of the kind of aesthetic choices that you made in how to tell the story visually?
Sure. Well, we live in Chicago, so we thought we knew cold, but we didn't really know cold, because when you get into Minnesota and Wisconsin in the winter, it's a different level of cold. So shooting in the winter during the races, it was pretty challenging. Just trying to stay warm, keep our fingers functional. But when we went back for the race to follow everybody, we took a big crew of people with us, a lot of friends and colleagues that we all, independent filmmaking here is pretty robust in the nonfiction world, so we all help each other out. And one of the filmmaking crews, our friends Nick and Andrew, they formed a sound and camera crew. And Nick grew up in Michigan, and so he was sort of familiar with the area and the weather and everything. So he had a lot of tips to give us. But we learned a lot about keeping warm from the mushers themselves, in terms of, like, putting where to put the hand warmers and where to put the toe warmers, and how to arrange things and how many layers you need. And so that was a big learning experience, and I'm really happy to know all these skills now, how to stay alive and comfortable in a when it's like minus whatever degrees it was. Um, and sorry, what was the second half of that question? I got
This
lost in the
was
snow.
there. Does the way
All
that you
this,
picture the story visually
sure.
change based on I guess, the circumstances you're having to capture the event?
Yeah, that we had to change a lot of things. Our original intent, because what we kept hearing from the mushers was that it's so, like, it's just this relaxing space out in the woods, and it's just like this, them and the dogs, and all you hear is the dogs breathing, and the snow and the wisp of the sled. And we really had these visions of having these poetic interludes between all of the action, where it would just be them on the sleds out in the woods. And that was all of the stuff that we were going to film when the pandemic came about, and so we weren't able to go and get all these things. But it kind of started to fall apart right from the beginning, because the very first night of the race, we put a GoPro, sort of a hacked GoPro. It was had like a large capacity battery, a large capacity card. It was going to last the whole time, like 8 hours out on the trail. And we put that on one of the mushers, and we were going to put it on different mushers on different days to give that sort of POV of what it's like to be on the sled. And the very first night, it fell off in the middle of the woods somewhere. We never recovered it, and because they didn't know when it fell off, it just fell off their body and it was gone. So that was the end of the GoPro idea for that particular race. And we did some sort of poetic sense of style shots and things like that. But ultimately, when we put it together, like, a lot of those didn't make the cut because it just didn't fit the mood and the energy of the film.
Hmm.
But really, I still don't really know what it was like for them out in the woods, when it's just them and the dogs, because all we have mostly is them getting ready for the race. And the bits where we do have them out on the trail, it's not enough to really give that sense of wonderment that they all talk about. But we hope that we conveyed the magic of what they feel, through the styles that we ended up going with. But yeah, it was supposed to be a much more poetic, sort of dreamy kind of film, and it didn't turn out that way. But we're happy with it nonetheless.
Yeah, it turned out great. I know one question that I just have to ask, because there are folks, is that what the way the dogs are treated are a little different, than, let's say, maybe our pet at home, and
Yeah.
how did you guys kind of navigate that about um, you know how you decided to kind of show it, and, like, what would you say, like, what would the mushers say, um, in regards to you know how we, as maybe a more urban audience, I guess, might need to kind of see how the animals are treated or interacted with, compared to what we might be familiar with our own domestics.
Yeah, that's a great question. We all had a lot of misgivings when we went up to sort of explore this community, and we decided before we even went up, that's like, okay, if this is a terrible thing, then we don't want to film it. We don't make a film about this. I grew up in Kentucky in sort of the horse community, and I saw where our horses were. We had average of two over my life living in Kentucky, but they were part of the family. Like, one of our young foals came into the house when she was young enough to fit through the door, and we thought it was hilarious. But we also saw sort of like animal as commodity in horses in the horse racing industry and such. So I had a lot of misgivings, wondering how it was going to be. Is it going to be like these animals are tools, or are these animals, living, breathing creatures that we can celebrate? And we were really, really happily surprised, or relieved, maybe is a better word, when we got up there and all of the people that we filmed with. Now, we didn't film with, you know, a lot of people, but all of the ones that we ended up filming with, they do treat their animals as part of their life. Like their whole lives revolve around their dogs. And it was such a welcome sight to see them having these relationships. Now the optics of it does look a little harsh. Like you're always seeing these dogs on these giant chains, and they're chained to the truck or they're chained to a post. And when they carry them, or lead them around, they lead them by the harness on two legs. And we tried to answer some of the questions as to why they do that in the film, but it's essentially because these dogs are so strong and so fast that they would literally just pull people over if they weren't completely under control all the time. They do all get, all the ones that we filmed with, they all have plenty of opportunities to run free. They do free runs out in the woods. They do free runs in you know, enclosed areas and such. And then they train where they're running 30 plus miles a day as a team. And then they rotate the teams to keep everybody training, to find out what the best order and the best combinations are. But we sort of came back to our big lug Labradors here at the house, and we were like, okay, wow, we need to get you out more. You know, it's like we all need to be out moving around more, because we realized that our dogs, even though we love them, they sleep in the house, they have access to the beds and the couches, but they weren't getting nearly as much stimulation and exercise as these dogs were. And so it really helped us form a better relationship with our own dogs. But yeah, we had plenty of misgivings, and thankfully we didn't have any of them come to be where we saw something that was just horrible. Some of the things that we saw were surprising. You know, like, I'm not a hunter. I grew up in a hunting world, but I never hunted. But the idea also kind of, it helped me understand the world where, like the taxidermist that we have in the film, you know, she talks about how they only eat the meat that they hunt. You know, that's what their family eats throughout the year. So they don't buy meat at the market. They only eat the deer and whatever else they happen to hunt. And it's like, wow, okay, there's this relationship with the natural world that a lot of these people, it looks, from an urban standpoint, it can look a little daunting and harsh, but I feel like they actually have a very close relationship with nature. And it helped change my perspective a lot in terms of reconsidering how things look versus how things are. So it was good. But while we were filming, there was sort of an expose film that came out on the Iditarod, and they filmed like I think one of the scenes that was floating around at the time as like a teaser for the film was like a truck full of dead dogs or something. And so we had a lot of like walls go up, and they're like, well, what are you making this film about? What's this film really about? You know, are you trying to show something that's not going on? And we're like, no, it's like, we're just trying to capture the honest truth of what it is. It's like, we want you to look like you do. We're not trying to paint you black or white or good or bad or anything. So once we worked through that and we showed them some footage of what we were working with, here's the film in its early stages, everybody kind of got back on board. But there is an element of abuse, I think, in some pockets of this sport. But fortunately, we did not see any of it in this community where we were, which was a pretty robust community. But it is there aren't any professional dog sled racers in this community. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's like the tier where it becomes pro, the stakes are higher, the dogs become more of a commodity. I don't know. But we, at this level, with the people that we saw, we were like, wow, okay, these dogs, they live outside because they can't stand to be inside. They just hate the heat of like being inside. They hate being inside. They give them a chance. They want to go back out, and they make as best of a life as they can for them. And they have a really close relationship. Like the people, all the racers, all the mushers in our film, and the ones that we didn't film or didn't put in our film, they all have this very, very strong connection with their dogs. And it was very refreshing to see and inspiring in a way.
Well, I think you guys did a nice job. Thanks again for making the film. And, what are ways that folks can continue to kind of follow the film and your guys' filmmaking efforts? Is
Yeah,
there some
we
handle
have,
or website?
sure, we have our film site is Isthmus, which nobody can ever pronounce, but it's isthmusfilms.com. You can check out our films that are in work progress and some links to other films. Our co-director Lori has a film production company called Luminous Films, and it's luminousfilms.com. We also have a Facebook page for the film. It's Musher Musher the movie. Like I should know these things, but
Look up Musher
but
documentary,
also,
Musher movie, guys.
yeah, and what we're really excited is that PBS has picked this up, and so we're going to have it distributed through PBS on their Passport app, and also through Amazon Prime Video. That will come out in December this year. So if you see it here and you love it, please let your friends know and invite them to follow along, because we will have more side stories with our films as we go, as we get further into the distribution and everything. We'll have like little snippets of films, scenes and things like that, and some of the other participants that didn't quite make the film, but they have these amazing stories to tell as well. So we're going to try to have little vignettes of them scattered throughout. So we'd be excited to have all of this shared with more people if they come along.
Very cool. So, folks, yeah, if you like the movie, talk about it on social media or at the Backyard Barbecue, and let folks know this great documentary will be coming to PBS later in the year. Thanks again, B. Really great talking with you.
Thanks so much.